Almost every British garden vegetable has a wild ancestor that still flourishes today. Free and abundant, foraging invites new tastes and adventure. Familiarity with wild food is also tied to a sense of place and to the seasons. Learning about the medicinal and nutritional qualities of plants is both fun and a chance for discovery. Today, foraging exists as part of our desire to reskill and keep alive the wisdom of the natural world and living with the land.
Introducing a little bit of small-scale sustainable foraging in your life is a really good way of just connecting with the natural landscape, but in a really kind of tangible way, because you're ingesting part of that landscape, so it becomes an integral part of you. When we think about all the different ways that we can procure our food, the whole kind of modern industrial food system is fundamentally unsustainable, and so I think you have to think in that context, and I kind of like to put it in that context when people often say to me, well, what if everyone foraged? That wouldn't be sustainable. But the point is, you can just make it an aspect of your life, an aspect of your being, and it can be as simple as picking a few blackberries to, making a month's worth of kind of nettle soup. So sometimes when you're just kind of roaming through the landscape, some things just kind of stand out. You know what's to expect in that habitat perhaps, but it's always a bit of a surprise. It's always a wonderful surprise when you find sea buckthorn. Like, even if you didn't know what this plant was and that it's one of the most nutritious berries that you can harvest in this country, I think you would just be drawn in by its beauty. It's such a beautiful plant. Something that's wonderful to have as a kind of real pick-me-up in the morning rather than a coffee is just some neat sea buckthorn juice. It's like so tangy, it's so rich in vitamins, particularly vitamin C, but a whole range of other vitamins as well. There's all sorts of good advice for kind of first-time foragers. I think one of the first things I'd say is I think there's a kind of lost generation. Although foraging is becoming more popular now, it's like with the kind of convenience culture and stuff, we've kind of let go of foraging as a kind of culture, as a human species. But there have been times, even in recent decades, where we have foraged, and particularly like your grandparents may have foraged during the war. So it's like, ask your grandparents, have they ever foraged? Chances are they would have foraged kind of rose hips or blackberries, hawthorn indeed. They were encouraged to pick this during the war. So these things are all very common. So I'd say learn to identify some of these really common things: blackberries, hawthorn, rose hips, nettles, plants that are really versatile, really flavoursome, have a lot of potential for working with, and are abundant. Yeah, one thing I absolutely love about foraging is that at a kind of deep fundamental level, it's like innate in our genes. So there's a kind of radical equality about it, in terms of equality of opportunity to forage. But at the same time, I'd say there is a slight tension in the sense that, to build up the skills to forage safely and sustainably, it does take a long time. I mean, I've been foraging in a big way for kind of over 25 years now. I've got a lovely moist bit of laver seaweed. A number of these same species grow around the UK, but this is a really versatile one because you can dry it, you can flake it, you can use it as a seasoning, you can use it as a wrap for fish or other things. You can deep fry it, you can make a wonderful stock with it, you can put it into bread, pastries, biscuits, and actually that just kind of sums up some of the versatility of seaweeds. It's not just something slimy on the beach, which some people kind of might think. There's so many wonderful kind of flavoursome, versatile uses for it. I mean, there are so many reasons why I love foraging, because it touches on so many kind of important aspects of life, kind of even like profound kind of spiritual dimensions of life. But also from a really kind of obvious point of view for me, it's like, when I look around at the world and I think, particularly now, everything's like hyper ramped up, hyper speeded up. And I think when you're foraging, it has its own time dimension, like time almost stands still. I think you can be so in the moment just because the textures, it's such a sensual experience. The textures, the flavours, the sea, paddling in the sea, the sun on your back, or the wind and the rain, it's very elemental. So I think that's very kind of immediate and engaging. Foraging for me is like so many things. Like it's about creativity, it's about kind of almost having a conversation, a dialogue with kind of the natural world and kind of our place in it. But also within that, like a dialogue with our ancestors and the way they were connected with plants. And these kind of reed mace plants, sometimes called bullrushes, are one that you can look back to historically how humans would have used them. So particularly in the Native American tradition, they would use the starch from the rhizome under the ground. They would use the cores of these, the immature seed heads that we see mature ones now. And for me, like engaging with the creative aspect of foraging, it's taking that dialogue with the natural world like into the future. Like we know all these traditional uses, but when you engage in creativity, like what else can you do? So, you know, apart from the long tradition of using these as insulating material, I'm now using these to make syrups and put in drinks as well. So adding my own kind of twist to things, I find really kind of fun and inspiring. Again, it's something that's very common, very easy to identify. And that kind of comes back to the point where, because there is a lot of simplicity in actually getting out there and engaging with kind of wild foods, it is kind of radically open to everyone to do it. You know, you don't have to have a degree, you don't have to be like an ethnobotanist, you just be fully human. Get out there, do a bit of systematic learning, go with friends, you know, get together with a group of like-minded people that are interested in foraging and go on free walks. There's many, many of them. Just with a little bit of knowledge, you're motivated to go the next step. Broaden your knowledge, expand your knowledge, take it further and further. And with all things that are really worth doing in life, knowledge is accumulated slowly and constantly over time. There's no rush. It's just a beautiful lifelong engagement and learning process about our place in the natural world.